So just to give you a bit of a background, we at Kartavya, we are celebrating our first anniversary. And Sadhana, it's the weekly magazine publication that we have, which will be celebrating its 73 years.
Okay.
So on such an occasion, we wanted to go ahead and interview three editors. So as I have mentioned in the mail, we have already interviewed Mr. Ram, Mr. Fernandes from Scroll, and you to understand your perspective of journalism and what are your experiences and insights so that our readers can also know a bit better about this field.
I had graduated in science,
Right.
and I had got for 2 years I got very poor marks. Then for 2 years I got very good marks, but essentially my heart wasn't there. But I didn't know what to do. So it's one of those good coincidences in life that my mark sheet came with a spelling mistake in my name, because those days university mark sheets also came written by hand. So instead of sending it by mail, because those days there was no courier, I'm talking of 1975. So I went to Chandigarh to Punjab University to get my spellings corrected on my mark sheet. So while I was there, I saw on a notice board the entrance test for the journalism department. And next morning was the test, and I appeared. And it wasn't a very difficult competition, because I think there were 50 applicants for 25 seats, so no problem. And by the same afternoon, the results were declared. And then I thought, okay, let's do this. So it wasn't planned that way, but it happened that way, and it all happened for the better. Well, we were lower middle class family in small town North India, but we laid great store by nobody said media then, but by journalism, because so even in days when we had strained family finances, we always bought two newspapers, one in Hindi, one in English, and a couple of magazines. So two Hindi magazines and a couple of English magazines. So so there was always familiarity, and I know it's sort of a bit unfamiliar to say this, but there was a lot of radio, because television, Doordarshan has still not reached out beyond 50, 60 kilometers of Delhi. So we had very little access to TV.
Correct.
So radio was a big source of knowledge and journalism, particularly BBC.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gupta. Your screen froze for a minute there.
Are you okay?
Yes, I heard after Doordarshan, but after that the screen froze.
I said Doordarshan, and there was also the BBC and other radio stations overseas. So so there was a lot of exposure to journalism, and there was a lot of familiarity. But there was no family tradition. In my college, I used to bring out a weekly publication for the college, like a campus newsletter. But that was set with hand, and it's one of those things. It was just news on the college. I think the college had some funds for these activities, cultural activities or whatever. And there were a couple of very good teachers in English department, although I wasn't studying English. So they thought that they, because I was the curious type, I suppose, so they asked me to bring it out. So that was it, but that really wasn't very much. It was called College Prangan, which means college campus. I passed out in 1976, in the summer of 1976. Now, as you know, 75 to 77 was the emergency, and there were no jobs. So if things are bad in journalism today, they were enormously worse in that period because in any case, journalism was not so big. Second, because of the emergency, there were no jobs.
Right.
So when I was studying journalism as part of our journalism course, we spent 6 weeks on internship with a media organization. So I spent my 6 weeks with the Times of India in Delhi. So as a student. So when we were going back, the Times of India asked me because there was no work at the Times of India because I was discouraged by well-meaning people saying, why are you wasting your time in journalism? Go back to studying science. Yeah. But Usha Rai was there and she advised me to go to the sports desk. And she said, since you're interested in sports, I'll take you to the sports desk. And I got to do some work on the sports desk and I've always been interested in sports. So when I was going back to Chandigarh, the sports desk said, you become our stringer only covering sports out of Chandigarh. So that was 1 rupee per column inch and a retainer of 95 rupees per month. So I went back and I enrolled myself in Punjab University again in economics department where I never attended a class, never sat for the exam, but that was to get a hostel room. Okay. So the few months I then carried on like that, and I also did fair bit of freelance writing for Times of India, Sunday Review when Daryl De Monte used to run it. There was a publication called Youth Times, which later shut down, and many other publications. So that's how several months were spent, and I think by December of 2016, I got my first job in a tiny magazine in Delhi called Democratic World, which was a 1.5 man office. The editor was one man, I was the half man. And while I was there, I had the sports editor of the Indian Express, Mr. K.R. Wadhwani. He had told me that whenever our edition starts in Chandigarh, I'll make sure that you are recruited. So that's what happened. The emergency was lifted, as we know, in early 77, and then the election took place. And then the boom in the media came, and the Indian Express launched its edition in Chandigarh in August first week, 1977. So July, I got my first job in the Express. Before that, a few months I worked at Democratic World. So my first appointment in the Express was, I think my title was Reporter General and Sports. Well, I worked in the Express for 6 years. 3 years in Chandigarh and about 3 years in the Northeast. So when I had done about 3 years in the Northeast, it did look like I had done quite a bit of work there. And this opportunity came up from India Today. In fact, came in with the intervention of Mr. Arun Shori, because he recommended my name to India Today because India Today was expanding at that time. So India Today was very, and I was hesitant because everybody said, why are you leaving a daily and going to a fortnightly? India Today then used to be a fortnightly. But Shori said to me that, look, for you, you need to work out of Delhi on the national stage. You've done very well as Northeast correspondent, but you don't want to be outstationed all the time. So come to Delhi so you get to do a more diverse range of things. So that's how I came to India Today in Delhi in 1983. And initially it was a big shift because in newspapers you write shorter stories, in magazines you write long descriptive stories. And India Today those days used to have 8,000, 10,000 word cover stories. So, but nobody ever accused me of underwriting. I always overwrote. So that was quite useful, and I think I had a good 12 years in India Today, and I think you take whatever you do, whatever you learn, you take that skill to the next thing that you do. So I took my news sense from a sharp daily newspaper like the Express to a fortnightly magazine, and then I learned the ideas of packaging and descriptive writing and in-depth journalism from India Today back to the Express when I came there. And you find that over time, daily newspapers cracked the magazine code. And that's why magazines have become less and less important and powerful now. Well, idea of India evolves over time. And what evolved over time is something that I've written about many times. And I speak about it also. That's what I call as the bell curve of insurgencies in India. The separatist movements follow a bell curve in India. So separatism or violence increases, then the state response also increases. Uh, at some point, at some inflection point in the curve, uh, the insurgents or the separatists realize that no matter what the score in the number of bodies on the ground, this state is too powerful and too determined to give in. So they are willing then to settle. At which stage Indian state has always been willing to settle by giving some concessions, trading a few things. So Northeast is a very good example of that. It hasn't worked everywhere. It did not work in Punjab, but it wasn't even tried in Punjab. And it hasn't worked in Kashmir yet. But ultimately, this is what works. And I think that's how it will work with Naxalites also in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand going ahead. But that came from experience. The other thing about it's strange that, when I was covering disturbances in India, it looked like India will go from bad to worse to worse to worse to worse. The fact is, India has gone from bad to less worse to less worse to less worse to better. So there is a certain resilience, and I think Indian nationalism has evolved over these 4 decades in a very healthy way. Although some of the things that are happening right now, it looks like we are trying to reverse it by creating a one language, one faith, one concept of India nationalism. That is not needed for India. I used to head all the language editions of India Today, in addition to my work at India Today English. So India Today then had editions in several languages. That is Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, and I then launched Gujarati. So when I got that position, I had inherited the other 4 editions. They were already there. And I launched Gujarati around Navratri time in 1992. In fact, that's when Sheila Bhatt, who we had appointed editor of Gujarati edition, she took me to meet Narendra Modi for the first time. He did not have any official position then. He was not even an MLA. Because I was going to Gujarat, getting to know people and to understand things. So when Babri Masjid was destroyed, India Today's cover headline was "A Nation's Shame." So there was an equivalent headline for Gujarati, which is, I don't remember the exact Gujarati, Deshnu Kalank, I think, something like this. And our marketing head then, who was Deepak Shori, Arun Shori's brother, incidentally, he said that, look, if you do this, people of Gujarat will not forgive you. You will suffer badly. So I must say the credit for this belongs to Arun Puri, because this was said in front of him, and Arun Puri also said, it doesn't matter, right? Let's go with it. But we were surprised by the kind of sharp reaction that we saw. Because this is 1992, there is still no email. If there was email and there was social media, God knows what would have happened. But then, over the next couple of days, I began getting letters. A lot of them postcards, because they were the cheapest. Postcards, a lot of them inland letters. I'm not even sure that people of your generation have seen inland letters, right? And envelopes, and all saying you are Pakistan today, You are Islam today, you are Muslim today, shame on you, kalank on you. And readers just voted with their feet. And I think the edition was pretty much dead. I think it survived some more time, at least till I was in the India Today group till 95, but not much longer. Well, because this is a question that I was asked once, in fact, by Arvind Kejriwal, when Indian Express was the only paper that was seeing problems with the Anna movement and the India Against Corruption movement, because we saw it purely as a political movement. And we said that this has no interest in Jan Lokpal bill. And this Jan Lokpal bill is unpassable. This is a North Korea bill. It cannot be passed in India. So he did ask me, and he said, have you asked your marketing department, how is the line that your paper has taken on our movement working in the market? Mm-hmm. And I said that, look, we cover news. We are not producing a Bollywood film that we have to have a hit. And we are not producing a TV serial that has to have top TRPs. The news is the news. We can go wrong with our understanding, but to the best of our knowledge and intentions, once we believe something to be the news, it will be the news. Then it doesn't matter whether it sells or doesn't sell. But the fact is that while the Gujarati edition may have suffered, the Hindi edition with the same headline increased circulation greatly. So I've used this example frequently to try and to feed into the analysis of why Gujarat is sui generis in the way that there is an insecurity about Muslims, and that is why Gujarat is so fertile, such a fertile land for Hindutva. They didn't bother. I have to say that Arun Puri didn't bother. I think he took it in his stride. I mean, nobody likes something, a product going down, but I think it was okay. I think if you look at those issues of India today took a very good position on that issue at that point. And we were very proud of it.
And so after the edition was shut down, were you like, what role were you again going back?
Edition wasn't shut down while I was there, but this was only an additional charge for me. My main work was with India Today English. My writing, my editing, I was running a lot of sections there. It was mostly there. But as an additional charge, I was also running the language editions. In fact, I had 2 titles in India Today. I'm used to having 2 titles. So I was senior editor in India Today English and executive editor and publisher with all the language editions. So it was some time after I left that this edition was shut down. And then, as we know, I think in 2014 or 15, the remaining editions also were shut down, besides the Hindi edition, which is still there, which I regret greatly that these editions had to be shut down. But the realities of the market, plus people who are running a business know best what is best for them. I mean, I think a line used there was, in fact, there was a section in the paper. This was Adelphi is a series of papers published by International Institute for Studies in London. So I was a research associate there between 93 and 94 on sabbatical. So there's a section there that talks about how a majority acquires a minority complex. And that went to the question of how do Hindus, who are more than 80% of India, acquire a minority complex. So there were many pointers at that time, but the fact is that there was a minority complex. In fact, when Mr. Vajpayee came to power the first time, and when he lost power in 13 days, in his reply to the Lok Sabha debate on his vote of confidence, he quoted from this paper and he said, "आपको सोचना चाहिए कि majority को minority complex क्यों हो गया है?" And he said it not by way of an endorsement, but by way of anguish. And as you can see, as you saw also with this Ram Mandir thing, the majority does have a minority complex. And this is not, ours is not the only country where this has happened. This has happened in other countries also. Because people see, so it's a complicated set of factors. If you look at it on the simplistic side, the explanation is simplistic, not mine, simplistic. That look, the majority Hindus were ruled by minority Muslims for more than 700 years. So what do you expect? That India was always a majority Hindu country, but India's rulers were not only Muslims, many of them had come from overseas, and they ran an Islamic system. There was jizya on the Hindus for all those hundreds of years, barring 100 years, starting with Akbar and ending with Shah Jahan. So there are those issues, but also it's a question of how do various parties play their politics. So the BJP worked on this minority complex among the majority. Congress party, I would say that from 1986 onwards, played into it. Indira Gandhi would never have allowed it, but Rajiv Gandhi made mistakes, Shah-Bano case, then the proactive ban on Salman Rushdie's book, and that played into it.